What's up, everyone? Welcome to the NBA Pick and Pod. My name's Dawson Shine, and I'm your host who is never on time. So, normally, as I say, it's a weekly podcast, but in reality, you're lucky if you get it monthly. Thank God no one listens. Okay, so today I'm back. Schedule has been obviously hectic as usual. I'm trying to get started up on a podcast on hoop-ball.com. Be doing daily fantasy basketball talk. Unfortunately, a lot of technical difficulties so far with recording on my mixer, so that's been put on hold for probably another week or so, trying to get it figured out, trying to get more equipment. But the good thing is, it means that I have more time right now to record an NBA Pick and Pod, and my microphone setup is now much better than it used to be. Let me know in the comments if you do think it is better. I just want to know how it sounds to people who are listening online and on YouTube, because obviously to me it sounds great, but who knows how it transfers over the internet. Anyways, let's start talking about basketball, which is obviously the reason why you're listening. First off, we have to talk about Charles Barkley. Wait, isn't he out of the NBA? I mean, I know he's a Hall of Famer, but why are we talking about him today? Good question, Inner Me. Well, Charles Barkley and LeBron James have actually been going at it all week long, and I'm sure if you guys watch any Sports Center or whatever you guys want to watch, then you'd know this. Charles Barkley made some comments after LeBron James complained about the lack of help on his team and needing to add a playmaker to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And Barkley responded saying it's inappropriate, it's whiny, all of the above. Cleveland Cavaliers have given him everything he wanted. They have the highest payroll in NBA history. He wanted J.R. Smith last summer, they paid him. He wanted Amon Shumpert last summer, they brought in Kyle Korver. He's the best player in the world. Does he want all of the good players? He don't want to compete? He's an amazing player. They're the defending champs. So basically, Charles Barkley's trying to say he's gotten everything he wanted. Why is LeBron James still bitching about this? I mean, they've paid every single player on that roster. Tristan Thompson, Shumpert, J.R. Smith. They've got Kyle Korver. They traded Mike Dunleavy for Kyle Korver. And the corpse of Mo Williams, of course. So, I mean, they're making good moves, and they have a fantastic team that's in the top of their conference. But they've had a rough month of January. The real issue is that LeBron James is talking about adding a playmaker, especially a backup point guard, because that's what the Cleveland Cavaliers have missed since Dellavedova left. They just haven't had that backup point guard to really help run the second unit. And of course, LeBron James is running the first unit. So he can't play every minute of the game, and I can see where he's complaining, because of course he wants to have a team that's going to win a championship. And to win it, you need to have a deep bench as well, especially when you're playing against a Warriors team that's just stacked top to bottom, 4 All-Stars, 2 former MVPs, just ridiculous. So LeBron James gets called out by Charles Barkley. And for a guy that literally never responds and has media controversy, besides of course the decision in 2010, he fired back. God damn. James fired back on Monday, responding, "I'm not going to let him being Charles Barkley of course, disrespect my legacy like that. I'm not the one who threw somebody through a window. I never spit on a kid. Never had unpaid debt in Las Vegas. I never said I'm not a role model. I never showed up to All-Star Weekend on Sunday because I was in Vegas all weekend partying. All I've done for my entire career is respect the NBA the right way. 14 years, never got in trouble, respected the game. Print that." I mean, that's a pretty sharp outburst by LeBron James, especially when he does not really disrespect the NBA. He's right. He represents the NBA as a role model for kids, unlike Charles Barkley, who in the past even had commercials with Nike saying, "I am not your kid's role model," which is where that quote came from LeBron James. And there was some context to some of those things, like when Charles Barkley threw a guy through the window. It was because it was a bar fight and he had been disrespecting him all night long. Of course, he was in a bar having a fight, so it's still not a great look on him. But overall, LeBron James has been a perfect image of the NBA player and has left nothing but respect for everyone in the field. And he fired back, and I'm surprised to say the least, but I think Charles Barkley has a little bit of truth in his words, and I think that's why it stung a little bit with LeBron James. Because LeBron does have one of the best teams in the league, and yet he wants more and more and more help. They're already the highest payroll in the NBA. They're over the luxury tax, and they're going to be paying hand over fist for the next coming years to basically keep this roster intact for LeBron James to compete into his later years of his career. And yet, he has the nerve to say that the front office is not doing good enough and that they're not trying their best or doing well. I mean, they built a team that won a championship for Cleveland. Hands down, it's the best front office in the league just for doing that. Not really, of course. If you look at Golden State, their front office has got to be the best. But still, the Cleveland Cavaliers organization has not failed miserably. They've built a championship contender that has perennial finals appearances. Because who else in the Eastern Conference can compete with LeBron James? No one. Out West, you may have some competition for Golden State. Last year they had the Oklahoma City Thunder, for example, that almost beat them. Of course, they took the best player from that team, so now there's less of a chance. But they did have competition. In the Eastern Conference, it was kind of a joke. The Raptors stole 2 games, but it wasn't much, really. It was like a fluke at their home court. And yet LeBron James continues to complain that his team is not good enough. Man, I don't know what to say. You got one weak spot. You don't have a backup point guard, and you're going to be firing shots at your front office organization that you help run, basically. I just don't see why that's okay. And I think Barkley definitely deserved to give a little response to LeBron James calling him out in such a way. And he did on Tuesday on Waddle and Sylvie show on ESPN Radio. Barkley said, "I stick by what I said. I'm not going to make this personal. He was all whiny last week. I'm good and I'm straightforward. I'm never going to get personal on an NBA player." And then when he was asked if LeBron crossed the line, Barkley said, "I was laughing. Clearly he did some homework. He Googled me and found some things. He was young when I was playing, so I appreciate that. But I'm not upset about it. My criticism was fair, and I'm good with that." And that's pretty true. That's a great response by Charles Barkley, in my opinion. He stuck by what he said, which means that he didn't make a mistake when he did it the first time. It wasn't an accident. He didn't go and personally attack LeBron James, and he did what Charles Barkley always does. He laughed it off. Because he always laughs it off. People make fun of him constantly for pronouncing things wrong, for not knowing certain players, for messing up on air, and he never cares. He lets it roll right off of him, because he doesn't care what people think about him. And in this case, I think it works for him, because he gave fair criticism and didn't respond with a personal attack in the same way that LeBron James did. LeBron couldn't handle that criticism, which is surprising for someone who's been criticized his entire career. Why is it all of a sudden that Charles Barkley hurt you the most with a silly comment on Inside the NBA, compared to the thousands of media people who have ripped on you for years and years, a 14-year career where he's been basically criticized and scrutinized every single year, right out of high school all the way till now. But Charles Barkley pushed him over the edge, I guess. And I think it's definitely going to be an interesting thing to play out. See if LeBron James will actually turn it up now that he's been called out and try and play better. Because I think he has that second notch in him where he just decides to play harder. And I think he might have just switched that switch on. Also, on top of that, interesting developments right now. The Cavaliers have actually been trying to do tryouts for multiple players who are out of the NBA right now to see if maybe they'd be ready to go and sign with the Cavaliers and be that playmaker off the bench they really need. They had, I think, 4 players so far that came to do some major workouts. Kirk Heinrich, Nate Robinson, Mario Chalmers, and of course, Lance Stevenson, who was injured last season as well as Mario Chalmers. And I think the 2 interesting ones that have gotten some more serious looks are definitely Mario Chalmers and Lance Stevenson. Mario, of course, has a lot of history with LeBron James. He played with him in Miami, went to the 4 straight finals with him, won 2 championships, and was the starting/backup point guard for most of that time. And I think he might be an interesting player if he comes back from that Achilles injury okay again. But more importantly, I think Lance Stevenson could be a real key cog in this machine that is the Cavaliers in their run to the championship. Lance Stevenson obviously was a huge component and almost could have been an all-star back when he played for the Indiana Pacers. He played incredible that season and earned himself a couple of good contracts. And I think he has the ability to be a playmaker off the bench that could really turn the tides to the Cavaliers when they're playing against teams like the Warriors or the Spurs, really good teams. Because Lance Stevenson, he's an okay defender, but he's a great playmaker on the offensive end. If you watched him last season with the Pelicans before his injury, he was actually turning it up. When the Pelicans were losing players left and right, he came in and he just carried them for those stretch of games before he got injured. And he looked good doing it. So if they can get him to sign maybe just whatever vet minimum that they can get him on, I think that would be a great way to turn this team around, get some morale up there, and then get that backup point guard/playmaker off the bench role filled with a perfect candidate in Lance Stevenson. And that would make it a very interesting finals if they can have that whole team set up like that, with Lance Stevenson off the bench, LeBron starting, of course. The only thing that's interesting is whether or not that Lance-LeBron dynamic will work and if they'll be able to keep him in line. Because one of the biggest issues with Lance Stevenson throughout his career is whether or not he can stay focused and if he can stay honed in on the task at hand and not get distracted by all these outside things. He's obviously had a couple instances with abuse with his girlfriend. He's also had on-the-court problems, messing around, not being able to focus or do well when he was on the Hornets, for example, when he left Indiana. But if he can get back to that same mindset he had in Indiana, where he was controlled by a good coach and veteran leadership like David West, if that happens with the Cavaliers, then he could really make a difference in this and make the finals a hell of a lot more interesting. So, that's going to be something to look forward to. I'm going to be hoping to come back with some more episodes of NBA Pick and Pod more frequently, but please don't hold me to it because when push comes to shove, I'm so unreliable with putting these up. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Glad to be back, and I hope that the new setup definitely sounds better for your headphones and my own. So, thanks for listening, and have a great day, everyone.